On the 31st of July 2025, it was confirmed that St. John Henry Newman would be declared a Doctor of the Church by Leo XIV. A Doctor of the Church within Catholicism is a man or woman of great holiness and learning, whose teaching and wisdom not only resonated with their contemporaries, but still illuminates, instructs, and inspires Catholics today. Through his nomination, Newman and Pope Leo XIV share a similarity with the only other case of an English figure becoming a Doctor of the Church, which was that of Venerable Bede in 1899, who was given the honour by the current Pope's namesake, Leo XIII. But who exactly was John Henry Newman? To some he was a convert, to others a cardinal, to many more a brilliant writer, a controversial thinker, and a saint. But beyond the titles, Newman was a man of paradoxes, a loyal Anglican who became a Roman Catholic, a private scholar who sparked public debate, a man of deep tradition who called for reform. In this video, we'll explore his life, his writings, his controversies, and his legacy. Whether you're familiar with Newman's name or only just now hearing about him, this video will reveal one of the most fascinating minds of the 19th century and show just why he continues to be so relevant to the Church. John Henry Newman was born in London on the 21st of February 1801, the eldest of 6 children in a middle-class family. His father, John Newman, was a banker. His mother came from a family of French Huguenot descent. Although he was not overly religious in his youth, Newman underwent a spiritual awakening at age 15, which he would later describe as a powerful, life-altering experience. He later wrote, "When I was 15, a great change of thought took place in me. I fell under the influences of a definite creed, and received into my intellect impressions of dogma, which, through God's mercy, have never been effaced or obscured." This early conversion shaped his understanding of God as personal and transcendent. It also planted the seeds of a spiritual seriousness that would define his life. In 1816, tragedy struck. His father's bank failed, plunging the family into financial uncertainty. But Newman's academic talents were undeniable. He enrolled at Trinity College, Oxford, and later became a fellow at Oriel College in 1822. At the time, Oxford was not just a university, it was the intellectual heart of Anglicanism, and Newman quickly became one of its brightest stars. He was ordained as an Anglican priest in 1825 and began serving at St. Clement's Church in Oxford. But his real impact came through his preaching and his scholarship. By the 1830s, Newman was growing increasingly uneasy with the direction of the Church of England. He saw it drifting towards theological liberalism and political compromise. In 1833, while on a trip to Sicily, Newman fell dangerously ill. During his recovery, he wrote the hymn "Lead, Kindly Light," a poetic reflection on divine guidance in dark times. Upon his return to England, he joined forces with fellow Anglican scholars like John Keble and Edward Pusey. Together they launched what would come to be known as the Oxford Movement. The Oxford Movement was a call to return the Church of England to its ancient roots, particularly the traditions of the early Church Fathers. Its proponents saw Anglicanism not as a break from Catholicism, but as its true continuation in England. Newman's role in the movement was pivotal. Between 1833 and 1841, he wrote 24 tracts for the Times, essays defending the apostolic and sacramental nature of the Church. He argued that Anglicanism needed to reclaim its Catholic heritage, especially in its liturgy and doctrine. The movement quickly became controversial. Critics accused Newman and the Tractarians of Romanizing the Church of England. The infamous Tract 90, which Newman published in 1841, argued that the 39 Articles of the Anglican Church, its key statement of doctrine, could be interpreted in a Catholic sense. This soon set off a storm of outrage. Newman was called everything from a subversive to a traitor. Even many within the Oxford movement were uneasy. Newman was forced to retreat from public Anglican life. He resigned from his position in Oxford and retired to a small Anglican monastic community at Littlemore. There he began a period of intense prayer, study, and soul-searching. In 1845, Newman reached a dramatic conclusion. He could no longer remain within the Church of England. His reading of the early church fathers had convinced him that the Roman Catholic Church, despite its faults, was the true heir of the apostolic faith. His decision was not made lightly. It meant abandoning his career, alienating many friends, and causing distress to his family. On October 9, 1845, Newman was received into the Catholic Church by an Italian priest. The event caused a sensation in Victorian England. The idea of a respected Oxford figure becoming a Roman Catholic was to many simply unthinkable. Newman was ordained a Catholic priest in Rome in 1847. He joined the Congregation of the Oratory, a religious order founded by St. Philip Neri in the 16th century. Upon returning to England, Newman founded the first English oratory in Birmingham. Despite becoming a Catholic, Newman's troubles were far from over. Many Catholics distrusted him because he was a convert and a former critic of Rome. Many Anglicans viewed him as a traitor. Despite these difficulties, his intellectual output during this period was profound. If Newman had stopped writing after his conversion, he'd still be remembered as a major figure. But in fact, some of his most influential works were still to come. In 1864, he published a spiritual autobiography written in response to public attacks on his character, especially by the Protestant writer Charles Kingsley. In it, Newman traced the development of his religious convictions, showing how he came to embrace Catholicism in good conscience. The book was a sensation, helping to rehabilitate his image and giving the public a new understanding of his sincerity. Another landmark work was The Idea of a University, a collection of lectures Newman delivered in Dublin in the 1850s, where he was helping to establish a Catholic university. In it, he argued passionately for a liberal education rooted in theology, philosophy, and the humanities. He believed that education should form not just the intellect, but the whole person. Perhaps his most significant theological work was an essay on the development of Christian doctrine, written during his conversion period. In it, he introduced the idea that Christian doctrine could develop over time without contradicting its original essence, just as a tree grows from a seed. This idea of doctrinal development would prove hugely influential in Catholic theology, particularly at the Second Vatican Council over a century later. For much of his Catholic life, Newman was on the margins of the English Catholic community. He was respected, but not trusted. Yet, in 1879, Pope Leo XIII decided to recognise his contributions. Newman was made a cardinal, an extraordinary move for someone who had never been a bishop. In his acceptance speech, Newman reflected on his life's mission. For 30, 40, 50 years, I have resisted to the best of my powers the spirit of liberalism in religion. Liberalism in religion is the doctrine that there is no positive truth in religion, but that one creed is as good as another. These words were interpreted in many ways. Newman was not against religious liberty in the political sense, but he deeply opposed the idea that religious truth was merely subjective. For him, truth mattered, doctrine mattered, and conscience, rightly formed, was the path to that truth. The cardinal's hat was a vindication. After decades of suspicion, Newman was now honoured by the very church that he had sacrificed so much to join. Newman spent his final years quietly at the Birmingham Oratory, continuing to preach, write, and counsel. He maintained a deep commitment to pastoral care, often corresponding with young Catholics and converts. He died on the 11th of August 1890 at the age of 89. His funeral was modest, in keeping with his wishes, but thousands lined the streets of Birmingham to pay their respects, and Newman's influence only continued to grow after his death. He was declared venerable by Pope John Paul II in 1991, beatified by Pope Benedict XVI in 2010, and canonised a saint by Pope Francis on October 13th, 2019. His writings continue to be studied by theologians, philosophers, and educators. Many of his ideas have shaped modern Catholic moral theology. His thoughts on doctrinal development have helped pave the way for a more historically conscious, dynamic understanding of church teaching. And his model of Christian conversion, rooted in personal integrity, intellectual honesty, and deep humility still resonates with people across denominations. Newman once wrote, "God has created me to do him some definite service. He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another." These words reflect his sense of vocation, not as ambition, but as a calling, and in many ways, his life has become a blueprint for Christian vocation in the modern world. Perhaps Newman's greatest legacy is the fact that he bridged different worlds: Anglican and Catholic, academic and spiritual, ancient and modern. His life shows that conversion is not a betrayal, but a journey towards a greater integrity. His theology shows that tradition is not static, but living. And his legacy challenges all of us, believers and skeptics alike, to seek truth with humility and courage. Today, his name graces university centres, Catholic ministries, and educational institutions around the world. His writings are still quoted by popes and theologians, and his prayers still stir the hearts of Christians today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for more History with Liam.